Common Ed with Jared and Ian. I mean, there's got to be a common sense approach to this. I mean, right?
Generation X has been quiet. Way too. 15 seconds. Velocity 2,700 feet per second. Altitude 9. New knowledge we know.
Common Ed.
I want my MT.
Hey, and I feel fine.
Hey, Ian here with Common X with Jared and Ian. We are here at our favorite place, Birdie's Bar and Grill, and we are speaking to the new owner. At Common X Podcast with Jared and Ian, we have met and know a lot of people. The new owners are the sweetest people we have ever met.
Yep. Cody Quick here. I'm one of the new owners at Birdie's, and we are excited to have Common X filming and doing their podcast here. We just took over the beginning of September and are looking forward to having more friends become new family members here. My business partners, Billy Quick and my friend Matthew Heilman, are the friends and culture behind building community, and we hope you join us here.
Oh, yeah, and Jared's busy stuffing his face with the amazing cheese curds. We just love it here. See you here, Birdie.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I've been at Birdie's for 9 years. I have the pleasure of meeting these idiots. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I know there was an S on that, but like she was clearly talking to Jared.
No way, bro. She was clearly talking to you, dude.
It's great. We have awesome food, awesome cheesesteaks. If you've never been here, those things are to die for. My cooks treat them very well back there. All these screens, football, all sports, great atmosphere, great regulars. Come here and make family. We just recently got new owners. Come check it out. Yeah. We have specials daily. Taco Tuesday is today. Monday we have a beer and a pint night. So you get a pint of beer and a burger for...
Hell yeah, what day is it?
Wednesday we do cheesesteaks for $13.95, which are awesome.
Delicious.
Yes, dollar bone-in wings on Thursdays. 75-cent boneless wings. Our wings are like that. Fish Friday, fish and chips
About
Friday.
that, we're Jared and I are gonna need 12 teriyaki boneless wings.
They're amazing. Saturdays, it's just a random special if we come up with something. And then Sundays, happy hour all day. And breakfast is from 9:30 until 11 on Sundays during football.
All right.
Come check it
So get your ass down here.
Get your ass down here. We have awesome coworkers.
out. So, come check it out.
All right, welcome to Common X Podcast with Jared and Ian. How you doing today, Jared?
Not too bad, Ian. How are you?
Doing good, buddy. We have a special guest host on today. His name is Steve Mayzak. How you doing today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Doing really good, really good. We're excited to have you on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? So I throw him.
Well, I am related to this. I'm related to this guy. So I'm Jared's younger brother. Younger, smarter, better looking, all that stuff.
Is that true,
I
Jared?
don't know about better looking.
Definitely the hairier of the two.
I work in the IT industry.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, he's always had a full head of hair. At least you can't really probably see it under his hat. But anyways, yeah, see the dog grease. So I work in technology, and right now I work for a company called Elastic, and I lead the AI search team. So we are a team of architects that go out and help customers and prospects understand how to use us for AI, like any kind of new AI app they would want to build that involves text and, unstructured data more so than structured data, but they both work together. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Well, this is episode 6. Common X with Jared and Ian, and we are talking about whether or not AI will take our jobs today. Do you have an opinion on that, Steve?
It depends on the job, but yes, AI is going to take some jobs, like guaranteed. Just like most technology seems to take some jobs, it also
Right.
creates a bunch of new jobs that we didn't dream or imagine when that new technology was introduced. So I think it's going to be that same thing again, and I'm already starting to see some indications of where it's going to take jobs, and it already has taken jobs. I think we all kind of understand like the way that it produces art and stuff. Maybe you don't need to hire a graphic artist to make that logo for your podcast, for example, or like the images for your YouTube videos or for some marketing brochures. Like I would imagine that artists are already feeling the impact of that. But at the same time, what I've seen is that if you know that domain really well, you get better results from the tools. And so,
Sure.
I as a non-artist can't produce amazing images that are super detailed, but Jared probably could because he knows how to explain what he wants and I don't. But that's only a prompt away, right? As you learn the techniques, you become potentially as good as an artist without ever having to draw anything or paint anything, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a learning curve to understand those prompts and those tools, but like once you got it, man, it's easy.
Yeah.
So, and like learning curve of like 2 YouTube videos in 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And the results are insane. So.
Yeah. Well, the World Economic Forum has stated that 85 million jobs will be displaced. That's their figure, I guess. While what Steve said, 97 million will be created. So that's roughly 44% of anticipated layoffs just in 2024 alone. What do you think about that, Jared?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that a lot in the tech industry, especially. More and more companies are laying off people as a lot of those jobs can be now done by one person doing like 5 people's jobs with all these different AI tools, right? So like Canva, different things like that can automate some of that process of like creating PowerPoint documents or like Steve said, creating that art. So if you wanted to use art in presentations or even videos, there's AI video systems now creating videos. So once that gets better, Hollywood's gonna have to watch out because even like some of the deep fake technology that is out there is crazy.
Yeah, it certainly seems
I
that.
think a lot of the layoffs that are happening right now are delayed, like they should have been done a while back.
Right.
Like if you look at what Elon did when he took over Twitter, he laid off what, a third or 2/3 of the staff, and Twitter's humming along just fine as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies overhired, and now you have a lot of people that are in positions that aren't doing a whole lot to move the needle for that company. And so my expectation is that there's going to be a lot of layoffs that get done under the guise of AI as an excuse, but it's not really an excuse. It's just that they overhired and weren't managing people appropriately. And next thing you know, you have a bunch of people on the payroll that are doing a lot of nothing and just taking a paycheck, right?
Yeah. See episode 1, bad leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
I will be good and move on. But I will say that Elon Musk has made the statement that it will probably take all of our jobs at some point. But he made an interesting comment. He said, "But we can work them like a hobby if we want to." What do you think that he means by that? Or is he just talking out of his ass?
I don't know. Like Elon's hard to decipher sometimes, but there's a couple things that I know are true with him. Is like he usually overestimates how fast he can get things done, and I think this is another case of that. Although there's no timeline specified as far as I know in that quote, but like maybe eventually it'll take all of our jobs, but it's going to take a long time to get there, I think. And part of the issue is it's taking jobs that are knowledge worker jobs, which is kind of funny because we're the ones that are creating this stuff, and it's taking our jobs faster than it's taking the plumber's job or the electrician's job. And if you think about what it's going to take a plumber's job, like this is where I get into robotics, and I think robotics is super exciting. But with robotics, even there's like power requirements that, where are we going to get the power? The batteries aren't small enough. They're not light enough. They don't last a long enough time to have a robot go in your plumbing for hours at a time. Now, maybe it can be tethered and that would work, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. And soon,
Unless
I
they
mean, in
do,
like the next 10 to 15 years.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like,
But
with
maybe,
the machine learning, you've seen like those robots that can cook and stuff now, but they were taught how to do that, right?
yeah, they were taught how to do that.
By
And I think,
mimicking humans.
yeah, that's right. And if you design, like, let's say a fast food restaurant, for example, this is one where I'm happy for it to take those jobs, because it seems like most teenagers these days that work in the service industry have more angst than I did when I was in the service industry. But that could just be me interpreting it wrong as an old man, like, get off my yard, my lawn.
Right.
But I can't wait for automated fast food. And part of it's because the quality will go up because it's the same process over and over again. So it should be consistent and of high quality. You won't get the attitude and you'll just pay by card or contactless payment or whatever. And so, like, you'll need someone to maintain the machines. You'll need someone to potentially load the machines, right? Eventually there's like, remember that scene in the Matrix where they're looking at all the machines and kind of talking about like who runs all these things? Someone's got to maintain all that stuff. And so until we have robots upon robots upon robots that, like, maintain the robots that we have, then who maintains the maintainer robots? And then who maintains those robots? Like, it could be robots all the way down, for example.
Right. But like you said, it's going to be a while.
I think it's going to be a while. And it's not necessarily the technology. I think we have most of the technology we need today to build all these robots. But it's like, I think part of it's incentives, part of it's power. Power is in like energy, not people power. And then the other thing is just like, we're still learning what this stuff can do. So, ChatGPT comes out with a new version. You see a bunch of videos on YouTube go up and they start talking about all these cool things it can do. But translating that into real world applications takes a long time right now because they're not predictable. You don't get predictable outcomes. And if software is anything that in the last, at least in my career as a software engineer, it's predictable, right? 2 + 2 = 4 when I do the math. The for loop runs consistently. The Boolean logic works just like I coded it to. And that's how these programs work, right? It's just a bunch of name value pairs, Boolean logic, for loops, things like that. And if I'm trying to recreate that in English language, which is what I speak, depending on what you speak, you would do it in your language. If I'm trying to tell it, ChatGPT, to build a program that I want it to build, and I know exactly what I'm telling it to do, but it's not going to get it right. Like, this is what happens when you try to use it to code. It gets it right about 30% of the time, maybe. It's kind of like, sometimes it's not worth it because I just know what to code. I'm just going to go code it real quick versus using an AI, copy, paste. You get an error, copy, paste the error to the AI, tell it this errored out, tell me how to fix it. It produces new code. You copy, paste that code. Eventually you might get something that works. That's the actual process today. At least that I use, and I'm not a full-time programmer anymore. So like, I'm not building software every day, but when I do talk to software engineers, the stories I get are all over the map, right? It's like, some say it sucks. It's like having a junior programmer that doesn't listen very well. And other people say it's amazing. But most people who I've talked to say it's like it's a productivity boost, but maybe by 30%. It's not a 10x your development capabilities or speed today. I think it will eventually get there, but it's not there yet.
And are they all using the same tools, or is there different tools for developers other than ChatGPT that are more?
Well, yeah, they have like GitHub,
language, program language specific.
Yeah, GitHub uses their Copilot, so anyone that uses GitHub can use their Copilot, and most of the software in the world is stored in GitHub, I think. And then there's like a plugin for VS Code, which is the Microsoft editor. The one that I used to use, IntelliJ IDEA, also has an AI assistant now. So they're pretty much all getting AI assistants. Like, our phones are getting AI assistants now. So, and we've had them with Siri and things like that for a while. But I mean, do you guys use Siri to do anything real other than maybe turn your lights on or start the microwave if you're advanced?
I pretty much just talk shit to her,
really.
I think.
Same with Alexa.
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe add a few grocery things to the grocery list, at least on Alexa. That's what I do. It's like I use Alexa for a timer. We tell it to shut up during movies because it thinks it hears its name, and add things to the grocery list. That's about it. Now, am I underutilizing it? Probably. But the more advanced I try to get, the more I want consistency. Otherwise, I'm not going to use it, right? If it can't do one thing consistently, then what's the point? And as I start to get more advanced in my prompts and my activity that I want it to do, oh,
You got to.
okay. Yeah, see, here's an article on Reddit from a year ago. 30% of the world's workforce will lose their jobs to AI within 7 years. That means 6 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
These studies, in my opinion, are fucking bullshit. They're just made up bullshit.
Right, it's pie in the sky.
Yeah, like if you go back and look at
butt.
these reports that were created 10 years ago for shit that was invented back then, would they be right? Probably not.
Yeah, it's like, job automation, right? You're automating repetitive tasks or data intensive tasks. So things that took a lot of people to input that data, it doesn't take that much time anymore for an AI to do it. So yeah, you can get rid of some people that way.
Well, but like what data are you talking about? Because there's lots of different types of data. Like paper processes are still being automated. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like, even putting the data into the GPTs, that's humans doing that, right?
Yeah, but it's moving
Partially.
in mass. Update available.
But your other example of like manufacturing robots, right?
Yeah.
I saw a lot of that when I was working for Daimler and I went to their factories. There's humans where humans are needed that robots can't do things yet, like running wires and cables. There weren't good machines for that, but like building engines and engine blocks and everything else, that was all machines.
Well, like the same thing with keyboards, like not keyboards we type on, but keyboards, musical instrument keyboards. Roland and other companies have been doing robotic making of those for a long time. But it's like kind of funny because those are highly specialized, right? So all these different manufacturing industries create highly specialized robots for the task at hand. And I would think that we're moving into an age where you can have an arm that you can just buy. And whether you're building a car or a piece of hardware for a home office or for a pool, like whatever, could be used. Like a lot of the same machines could be used just with different programming potentially. But I don't know. I don't know enough about robotics.
What is there anything that can curb the fears of our audience? The people who are driving to work every morning that stop to get their gas, that work these office jobs or accounting jobs or work at the dental office. Is there anything that we know from research that we can say to ease their fears on whether or not they're going to lose their jobs? Because I know it's a legitimate concern amongst people out there. I mean, it was enough for us to create this episode on AI taking jobs. Is there anything we can tell them to curb their fears? I mean, you're in the AI industry. I know that you've made some statements that we're a little bit far behind as far as people losing their jobs. Like there's still a ways to go, but do you have any insight on that?
I mean, I think number one is you need to learn how these things work. Like I find one of the best ways to get rid of fear is to just understand what I fear. So the more I understand, the less I fear it. And I would say for people that are afraid of AI taking their job, go use the AIs. Like go use ChatGPT and try to get it to do your job in a way. Like if you have a desk job, try to get ChatGPT to do your job and see what you can make it do. Now, what you're going to experience is how good these things are and how magic they seem, but also all the limitations. And these limitations are the things that you don't have to worry about for right now, that developers and companies are trying to create software to help circumvent, including my company, right? Like, but we're not 100% on these things. So if you have a job where, you're doing a lot of data input, data entry stuff, yeah, you should be worried, because you can go to ChatGPT and you can ask it like, hey, take this spreadsheet and reformat it this way, and then create a new output format. And ChatGPT is really good at that. It's been good at that for a while. Like, I had a spreadsheet last year that I had to convert from one format of addresses to another, and it was able to do it on the first try. Like, very impressive. So if that's your job during the day, I would probably be worried. But the best way to not worry is to make yourself more valuable. And the way you make yourself more valuable, in my opinion, is to become a domain expert on something. Like, those are the jobs I think are going to go last. I could be wrong here. It's AI. Who knows what's going to happen? But what I see right now is the rise of the domain expert. And the more you know about a certain domain, the better off you're going to be long term, because you'll be the last one standing. Now, the last one standing may still get fired or lose their job to an AI that replaces them. But like, I can't see beyond that, so I don't know what to say there. But I do think that the more you learn, the more you know about a specific topic, the better off you're going to be. And a lot of these AIs, they learn by ingesting a lot of data and learning from that data, right? They learn the common pathways or the things that are similar with all that data, and they give it a weight. And that weight determines how often that will come up next in the way that it strings things together. Now, I'm oversimplifying in part, but that domain expertise has to come from somewhere, right? And if all these AIs that we're using, these LLMs, have scoured the internet and they've ingested all the content that's ever been created, then what's left, right? And now they're starting to talk about training AIs on their own data, which could create what's called AI rot. It's kind of like, have you guys ever seen Eastbound and Down with Kenny Powers? So Kenny Powers listens to his own motivational tapes. Right. It creates the worst kind of echo chamber, right? Like, he's only getting his own advice. And I think that's a good metaphor for how these LLMs will get worse over time, is they only listen to themselves. They'll like slowly get worse and worse, because they're listening to things that could potentially be made up, right? And how do you detect a hallucination? Oh shit, Ian just dropped off. I assume his browser's restarting or something.
Must be.
Yeah.
I wonder, so do you see like management jobs going away then? Because I'd say there'd be a downsizing, because you don't have as many people to manage anymore, right? And do you actually see the rise of like some kind of AI manager?
I mean, would you work for an AI manager?
I don't know. Like, maybe. If I think about my interactions with my management over the last couple of years, and this may be a bad example because I had some pretty bad managers, but they were pretty hands off, right? Yeah. As long as you met your goals that you were supposed to meet and met your targets, and that could all be automated from data input, right?
Yeah.
From other tools like Jira or something else that track metrics. So if you had an AI manager that was just looking at your metrics, it would, I think the part where you'd get in trouble is the human side of it, right? Like, oh, you didn't meet your metrics, you're no longer valuable, bye.
Yeah.
Whereas with a human, are like, oh, well, let's see if we can work on, getting that better, or, what was involved, how come this didn't get finished, things like that, right? I don't know that machines are quite there yet on understanding that nuances with humans, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it a lot, actually, because I just didn't think that would be a thing. But now that you say it, I think there's a lot of my job, maybe a lot is harsh, but like there's some of my job that I could automate away. But a lot of it is like the communication back and forth, right? So I get an email or a Slack message from someone and it's actionable or it's not. And if it's like an FYI type of thing, those can be summarized very quickly. Like, just summarize the day's worth of FYI Slacks and I'll read them at the end of the day or whatever. The ones that need action, I would love for it to create a to-do list. In fact, I'm working on this with Gmail app I'm building is I'm just trying to bring more smarts into my Gmail experience. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm building a program that can ingest the emails, read the emails, and tell me if it's actionable or not. And if it's actionable, create a task for it.
Right.
That way, when I, wake up in the morning, I can see how many tasks did I get from email last night, every day. I think that would be really handy.
Yeah.
But another part of my job is actually going on customer calls and explaining how our software works.
Right.
And until that is automatable, like pre-sales will still be a thing. But that's again where domain expertise comes into play, because I'm a working manager. Like I take meetings just like my team does. So
Mm-hmm.
one day I might be working on some internal thing to make our team better. The next day I'll be on a customer call explaining how search works, right? And how to build a new vector search application.
Yeah.
And I think those types of managers will be harder to replace. The managers that just manage, there's probably not much difference between them and an AI, honestly. And you can probably
Right.
get
The
better
ones that are
results from an
hands
AI
off.
because they're more compassionate and
Right.
they probably reason better than your typical bad manager.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing people don't realize is they use AI a lot already, right? Like your Amazon Echoes, and like we talked about Siri and
Yeah.
smart thermostat and smart devices within your house. Like we're kind of surrounded with it already.
Yeah. I mean, I just installed those new Google Nest thermostats in my place
Yep.
to see, and it does feel like they're working. And I haven't thought about the thermostats since the day after I installed them, right? They maintain the temp. They seem to do a good job of like away home type of stuff.
Right.
And they all talk to each other, right? And they have temperature sensors that I can put in every room to make sure that my house is more balanced in terms of temperature, which I really like. The other ones, I don't think they had temperature sensors. So
Right.
or maybe they did inside the unit, but I don't know. But now I can place them wherever I want. So there's some cool things to this too.
Right. And even things like, Netflix, it'll recommend movies and shows based on what you've watched. Right. And then same with Spotify, depending
Yeah.
on the music, it'll create a whole entire playlist of different
Yeah.
music that you listen to that you can see like, oh, there's a weekly playlist for Jared. Click on
Yeah.
that. Well, hey, that's a lot of songs that one I already have on a different playlist and two I
Yeah.
haven't heard of, but are kind of that same genre. Right. And Amazon does something similar in suggesting products, right? Based on your searches or based on it listening to your phone conversations or based on just, it overhearing you because your phone's always listening to you anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've said something, then gone on Google and then an ad pops up for something I was talking about 5 minutes ago, but didn't do a Google search for. Right?
Oh, dude, I call it the turtle test. Like, just go to someone's house and start talking about turtles for 10 minutes. And next thing you know, they're getting a bunch of turtle shit in their recommended, ads. They'll see
That's
ads for
awesome.
like a turtle event or adventure in some park. It happens every time I do it. So now that
That's
I'm saying
funny.
turtles a bunch, I'm going to keep saying turtles.
Right.
If you're listening to this, put it on speaker. So as I talk more about turtles, you'll get turtle ads showing up in your feeds.
That's so
But
funny.
that stuff's easy. Like that stuff's been
Right.
around for a decade plus, right? It's like
Yeah. Easy.
entity recognition in text. Very simple.
Yeah.
Turtle's an entity. It's come up over and over again. So now it's starting to rank a little bit, and maybe they're interested enough to where if I show them an ad, they might click on it. And I think some people call this cool and personalization. Other people call it the enshittification of the internet. And I subscribe now more to the latter than the former, right?
Yeah.
The crazy thing is our software Elastic enables this capability, but I think it's so overused now. It's made mobile browsing almost useless. Like I rarely use my browser on my phone for actual surfing because mobile websites have gotten so bad that I just don't want to use them.
Yeah.
And the, desktop apps aren't much better, or web pages aren't much better. So I think like it's kind of gotten to this place where it's a little bit ridiculous now, and we need to find a new way to interact with information and for companies to make money because that's why they're doing it. So I don't know, I'm kind of on a rant here, but I think
That's a
they're
good
all
point.
these devices are already listening to us. You're right there. We're using AI every day.
Right.
But look how long Siri's been out and how much has it advanced since it came out? Like not that much, honestly. And
Yeah.
that was before LLMs. Now maybe Apple was using a language model for Siri. I don't know. But like LLMs really only came big onto the scene when ChatGPT got released, right? Before then, it was mostly talked about in data science communities.
Right.
And so usually in my experience with technology is like it comes out and it pops really big, like, oh, this new thing was invented, even though, people say it's like happened overnight. It took 10 years to get there, 20 years to get there. That's fine.
Right.
Let's say we took 20 years to get here. We now have the big innovation. The rest is going to be like probably a lot of toiling, and we might make new discoveries to make these things more efficient and faster and better all at the same time. But that initial pop of creation has happened. And so now it's just iteration on what exists, right? Until something new comes out, like fundamentally new.
Right.
And I think what we're seeing today is how good these things are, but also, like we said before, their limitations. So, who knows what jobs are going to be able to take next? I think it's like incentives. How much money is there in creating like a new app that's going to replace someone's job? Like, think of the capital investment required to build the machines that could automate a Wendy's restaurant. I just pick Wendy's because I like Frosties. So that's a huge capital investment. And what's the gain? The gain is I'm not going to have to hire as many employees, like, but they're minimum wage employees. Like, how long is it going to take to return on that investment over time?
Right.
So I think there's going to have to be a lot of innovation in a lot of different places to make all this robotic stuff possible with AI. And who knows, LLMs might just be the one part of a much bigger, broader picture of AI, where eventually we have different types of models, not just language models. People have talked about action models. I'm not sure if they're real or not yet, but they probably are, and they probably will be for a while. And there's going to be other types of models that do certain things, right?
Yeah, like machine learning, right? Like you said, even like big robotics companies now are using ChatGPT to help feed information into their machines, right?
Yeah.
To be more human,
Yeah.
interact better, be able to respond better, and do things a little bit better.
Yep. But like out of all this, like, where's the big job loss? I mean, I think there will be some obvious job loss in things like customer service, right? How many times have you used a chat application on a website to get help? I've
Well,
used
and
quite a few.
with technology, like, some of the editing software I've used, I can type in a sentence and there's not much difference between talking to a regular human now and what that
Yeah.
sounds like. So how do you know you're even talking to a human when you're talking to customer support? Right.
Well, I don't think
if
we
you
care.
feed in that big data, I don't think a lot of people care, but at
Yeah.
the same time, that's another instance of jobs going away, right? Because
Yep.
now you don't have that actual person
Yeah.
as that customer support person. You have a machine that's doing that for you.
Well, so that's right. Like, if you take a call center, let's say there's a call center for internet support, which is the one I used to work at. How many of those people are there just to handle the call load? And if I can start taking the call load and, A/B testing it, like put some in the swim lane where they're talking to a program, and then keep some in the human side, and then start measuring the results over time. If this works, I'm going to start sending more of those calls to the robotic side and less to the human side. And eventually I'm going to have to make a judgment call that the human side is now my judge, right? They're
Right.
the ones that are basically determining the quality of the interactions. And so until that is automated, and I don't know how that's going to get automated. Like, you could do it, I think, pretty quickly in a bad way.
Yes.
But if
In
you
a bad
leave the
way.
system to itself and just have it keep helping, or having it keep determine, let me say that over. If you replaced everybody in a call center with AI, who's going to determine what good looks like? Because if it's the AI, we don't know yet. I don't think we know if an AI can maintain a level of consistent quality over time. Just left to
It'd
its
be
own
interesting,
devices.
like you said, like if you had a conversation for half an hour with an AI pretending
Yeah.
to be a human call agent,
Yeah.
at what point is it either going to fail, or two, you're just going to be like, all right, can I talk to a human?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
welcome back, Ian. Like, all right,
Thank
can I
you.
talk to a human?
Hey.
Yeah, I get frustrated with the AI customer service instantly.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess it's just got a long way to go.
Well, I mean, part of it's because you're talking to a robot. Like, the reason I get frustrated is because I know I'm talking to a robot, and I know that they're like not actually listening. They're just basically presenting me with a choose your own adventure, and there's only 5 adventures I can take.
Right, based off
And-
keywords.
Yeah, and it's up to me to figure out which keywords to use that it will understand appropriately, because I don't want to go through a tutorial.
Yep.
And most of the time, it's like my favorite word to say to a robot operator is operator, or let me speak to a human, or something like that. You know, like I'm a United customer. The United one, I haven't used it in a while, but it sucks. It's the worst. So as soon as I get on a call, I'm just like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to a human being, because I know I'm going to get my answer solved very quickly. But some of these, like, some of them are damn good, and they're only going to get better as this technology gets better and we learn how to make better bots. But we haven't, like, I haven't seen a mass layoff of a customer service center yet, but I would imagine that it's going to happen just slowly, right? They're going to trickle out. So it'll either be your company's growing and you don't have to hire the next 5 support or customer service engineers, or it's going to be that your business isn't growing super fast, or it's stagnating and you need a way to cut costs. So you're going to start letting people go a few at a time, just to see how well the AI can take over and scale, because you're replacing one cost with another. And the hope is that the cost you're replacing it with is cheaper, right? And better.
Right.
Like, if it's just cheaper, but it's not better, I don't know if it's worth it. It's got to be cheaper and better, in my opinion. Not always, but in this case, I would say when you're dealing with humans, it's got to be cheaper and better. Now, if it's better in the same price, maybe.
Yeah, I think that gets into another kind of topic about bias and fairness, right? Like, systems are built on human input, right? So, and humans have bias towards different things. So I
Yeah.
think there's been quite a few studies now that showed that a lot of these GPTs are biased, more left, or actually, like, some of the hiring systems they've found were more biased towards males than females. So it actually hired and recommended hiring more males than females. And even people of color, like some of the facial recognition tools they've put in there, like, it has a hard time seeing them. So I think there's that bias built into the system. So is there any way to kind of tone that down?
I mean, I don't know how. Like, how do you solve bias today? Like, take the machines out of it. How do you solve bias in an organization or in a group of people?
You have to have a conversation, honestly.
And you have to have a diversity of thought, right?
Right.
But at some point, someone has to decide what's right and what's wrong, what's true and what's false.
True.
And as far as I can tell, like, depending on how many people believe a thing, that can just make it true, right? Like, enough people believe that the world is round, and so it's true. But there is a small group of people that believe that it's flat. If those people started to grow in population and the round earthers started shrinking, at what point would flat earth become true?
True.
You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you make these things unbiased? I think diversity of thought, diversity of training data is one way, but at some point someone has to decide, if I can go left or right, which one do I go here?
So
and
we
if
just
we
need
leave
to
that
hire
up to the machines, then are they going to get it right more often than a human gets it right? But then who's deciding what's right?
Right. Well, George Bush Jr.
It makes me want to take off my shoe and throw it.
Like, I get stuck in this philosophical loop here.
So I think that it might be reasonably safe to say that all three of us kind of believe that this is in its infancy stage, right? I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of good food for thought there too. I'm trying to think about, that kid that's in college that's going for their bachelor's right now, trying to figure out what they're going to do with their life. Is there a recommendation, engineering, obviously, to just join the battle on how to handle the diversity and non-biased AI opinions that are being integrated into the systems and platforms that we use to make our products? Is that kind of where we're headed? I think you're right. I guess engineering would be the way to go, wouldn't it?
I mean, I think
even
so.
Like philosophy too. Like, a lot of this is philosophical debates about, like I said, biased, right? So, and having machines learn empathy. Like, can you?
I mean, I think you can, but again, someone has to code it. Someone has to tell it this is what empathy looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
And
The
then you're taking
empathy
their
is the coder.
interpretation of what empathy looks like. It's like Google saying, yeah, like
Right.
when they released the latest version or a new version of Gemini a while back, like everyone probably remembers, you ask it to give you an image of George Washington and it created a black guy. It's
Right.
like, okay, we know George Washington wasn't black, so there's clearly
Right. Or
bias in
signing
that.
a Declaration of Independence had a lot of black people and
it's
some
like
women in there because diversity, inclusion, and equity is now a
so
huge
this
thing.
is like wokeness infecting an LLM. Now, I think wokeness is bad, but there's plenty of people that think it's good. And
I think it's bad.
like, who's
also.
right?
You're pandering to minorities.
But who's right? This is the challenge. Like, this is the philosophical challenge. Like, someone has to define what good is, and like, it's tricky. And that's why I go back to however many people agree with it is usually what makes it right or wrong.
Right, the majority.
Yeah. It's funny when ChatGPT 1.0 came out, the latest one, I started asking it to define like ethics and morals and what makes a strong, good moral and a bad moral, or good ethic and bad ethic. And it gave me a bunch of stuff, and I just kept asking it this question, like, to define these things. And when it would give me a definition, I would then go like, do the 5 whys on that. Eventually it said like a good cultural norm is that, like, there's 2 things basically. Is a society should be good for everybody. It shouldn't be harmful for people. It should like support the individual and their rights and their freedoms, and like not be against the individual. And then the other one is like, what you would call a good moral is one that's ultimately good for society, which makes their lives better in some way, right? Now the question is, does it make someone's life better to be biased in a certain way? So is it better that Gemini produces a group of, like, all the founding fathers were black instead of white? Is that good? I'm sure there's some people that thinks that's good, right? And they're probably going to try and make that a thing. And so all they have to do is produce content, put it somewhere, engage a community with rage, get them to comment on it a lot. The LLMs will eventually get trained on it and insert new bias, right? Like, shit, it kind of becomes this.
History is written by the winners.
Yeah, it's like,
or rewritten by AI bias.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's really human bias, right? Because the humans are the ones putting the data out there.
Yeah, which is why, like, when you hear
it up.
a Silicon Valley exec get all excited and say, like, we're this altruistic company and you should just trust that we know what's best for everybody, it worries me, because, like, now all of a sudden their opinion is what's, in the LLM, and they and their team ultimately decide what good and bad is.
Yeah, Elon
That
Musk
doesn't seem right either. Yeah, like Elon Musk. It's so funny.
Yep.
He says he wants free speech, which I love about Elon Musk. But then you hear these stories, and I don't know if they're true, where he like promotes his tweets over other people's to make sure his voice gets heard. It's like,
the Super
is that
Bowl
true?
instance.
And if it's true, can you have someone that loves free speech and is trying to do everything they can to maintain free speech?
He doesn't.
But also
he doesn't want free speech,
and let that ego get in the way of things.
Right? As long as it fits his agenda.
As long as it's free for him.
You're a bitch, Elon Musk.
This is the challenge with the benevolent dictator model. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so Ian, back to your question about fears, and like, I think, again, learn as much as you can about these things and try to use them in your day-to-day life. That will give you the best insight into what jobs it's going to take eventually. And then try to become an expert at something. Like, that served me well in my life. I'm biased to that. So, like, try to become really good at something. If you're really good at something, you're going to add value somehow to other people's lives in some way.
Sure, and I think it's time to
I don't know what
to gear ourselves up for.
I think that'll be a value.
The conversation, prepare to enter that arena, because it's coming. It's clear and it's obvious that it's coming.
Yeah. Yep. Like, I was listening to a YouTube video this morning from, I think it was Linus Tech Tips, like on their channel, They were talking about how they've been getting comments from people that aren't able to find jobs right now. And what they said, I don't know if this is true, but I'll find out because I'm hiring someone at Elastic right now. Is they're hearing that and they're getting this themselves. There's a ton more people applying to jobs, and the reason that they're getting a lot more applicants is because it's way easier to apply now. It's way easier to have your AI create a cover letter and a resume, and it's way easier to have your AI just submit it to 1,000 websites, right? So if you know how to build something like that and submit your resume 1,000 times a day versus what used to take, hours to do 50 or something, what's going to happen on the other side? There's a bunch of hiring managers that are now, guess what, using AI to filter out all the ones that they don't want to see. And this is, Jared, to your point about the bias, like it's going to bias in a certain way that I may not even be conscious of because it's using an LLM to determine who's qualified and who's not with your prompts, if you can even control them. And then you're getting a short list of candidates. And who knows if those candidates actually know what the fuck they're doing, pardon my French.
Right.
But they probably used AI to generate a resume.
Right.
That had some of their skills on it. And so, their question on the YouTube video was like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, well, as a hiring manager myself, I'm going to do what I've always done. I'm going to talk to the people.
Right. You have to talk.
The biggest challenge now is like filtering through the applicants, but very few of the people I've hired in my life have come through online for applications, right? Like you put a post out that says you're hiring, you get a bunch of people that submit their resume, and I just haven't hired that many people that way because it seems like the best people aren't really looking that often. And so good hiring managers, I believe, are hunters rather than farmers. You go out and you find those good people. You will farm and, you'll get a few good ones that way. But in my experience, most of them come through hunting and referrals. So I don't see that going away. Like keep hunting. You're just going to have to keep hunting. And you will have more to sift through because AI is enhancing people's like LinkedIn profiles and stuff like that. You see it in LinkedIn. So use AI to write this thing. It's like, no, I'm not using AI to write this thing. Sorry. Like I refuse to do that, but I'm probably in the minority there. And I have done it to see what it writes, but like, I'd never like what it writes because AI tends to write in this vanilla way that strips everyone's voice out of itself because it's a linear regression through the middle, right? It's like, if everyone talks like this, it says, well, most people sound like this, so I'm going to make it sound like this. And that's lame.
Yeah, the only way I've found to get around that is training the AI chatbot in a persona, right? So I've actually typed a page and a half persona of who I want the AI to be, right? Based on this data, this is kind of how you act and are on a daily basis. So now write this paragraph or article. Basically, I would describe me, right, in a paragraph and a half. And I've been pretty impressed with the results. Like some of them are a little robotish, right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, let's change that, and that, because I can tell where it picked up on what I said in the paragraph, and it like took it literally, right? And so it translates that in what it gives back to me. So if I fix that prompt to tell it who it is and to be more like me, then its responses are more like something that I would say.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I think that's fair. I wonder how many.
But I think most people are just lazy.
Yeah.
Right. They're just going to go write a paragraph. Oh, it sounds okay. And like you said, hit AI. Oh yeah, that sounds cooler. Let's use that.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like me anymore, but that sounds maybe what a manager would want to hear. So.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of another job, I think it's going to take sooner rather than later is that of like the entry level sales rep. So the one that does a lot of outbound calling, those robocalls,
the cold calls.
Yeah. I get cold calls. I answer them every once in a while to see who it is and what they're selling and just like see if they're any good at sales because I'm in sales. Most of the time they're not very good. And the things that they're not good at surprise me. Like most of them are really good at having a conversation. They start the conversation well. They talk like a normal human being. But then they always lose me when they ask me what my company does or what I do. It's like, you fucking called me. Right, and you're asking me what I do and what my company does. Like if an AI does that, that AI gets fired. If a human does that, they just keep their job.
They're just lazy.
Yeah, they're just lazy. Right. So more power to the AI for taking those jobs or giving them to a more qualified human being. But like, I don't know. I mean, that
Or it could just be a robocall listening to your voice so it can emulate you. So that's why I answer most of those calls that say spam. Like,
It's fun to mess with them.
Oh yeah,
It's
hi,
fun to
how are
mess with it.
you?
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Jared,
like,
your
is this
Hispanic
Jared?
accent needs work.
Oh, I didn't even know what accent that was. I just pulled it out of my ass. So, you know, like it'll be a phone call. And I'm like, it says potential spam.
Yeah.
I feel like messing with somebody today. Click.
Yeah.
Hello? Is Jared there? Who? Jared Mayzak. Who? Oh, there's no Jared here.
Yeah.
Sorry, wrong number.
Yeah.
Right? And just go through like different accents too. So then if it is a machine, there, the machine's like, who the hell did I just call?
That's funny.
Right.
And we'll get canceled because you just did an accent too. Like, this is the other thing. You're not allowed.
So what Ian's asking is if we're all going to become like Wally.
Yeah.
Have people on carts with no jobs just living.
I mean, yeah. I would say probably not in our lifetimes. I can't imagine that
No.
it would happen in our lifetimes, but things are accelerating, so you never know. But I would argue that like there's a large part of the population that already does that, like retired people, right? They don't
True.
work, they don't go to a job every day. And we know what that's like, right? If you've ever taken any amount of time off, you're probably used to this feeling of like, I need to be useful in some way. And I took a few months off a couple years ago, and it was boring as hell. Like the first 3 months were amazing because I hadn't taken that much time off in my entire adult life. But after that, I was really bored. I'm like, this can't be what's left, right? And I think part of that was just an overreaction to working for 20 years where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to pride myself on doing nothing for months. And it worked for a while. I'd sit by the pool and have a drink or, smoke a joint or something, and it gets old. It's like, this is boring now. So then I'm like, I got to use my brain. I got to start applying it. So I started, really getting into the AI stuff more and more and got a job at an AI company, and that worked for me. But I just can't imagine a bunch of people sitting around doing nothing, because what are they going to do? Are we all going to become YouTube creators? And like, it's just people creating content for other people to consume content, and that's our lives. Like,
Right. I don't think humans are wired that way.
Yeah. I hope that humans are still being born today that eventually develop a strong desire to see something that they want to improve in the world and set out to do that.
Right. Contribute.
Yeah. Contribute somehow. So
yeah,
the whole idea of universal basic income, I've listened to a lot of podcasts and arguments about it, and it sounds miserable in my opinion, because they're saying one of the arguments you hear is, oh, well, if no one has to work, then who's going to do the plumbing and who's going to do the electrical and who's going to do the building and all that stuff? It's like, well, we'll pay them extra. Okay. So what are you basically doing? You're basically giving a bunch of people welfare, in my opinion. And what are they going to contribute? Well, they'll be artists or whatever, all the low paying jobs. It's like, I don't see that happening. It's not like artists are lazy,
Yeah. I don't, I mean, I can see it from a lot of the standpoint of where a lot of people don't have jobs right anymore, because I think there was just another announcement of another 75,000 people getting laid off from a lot of these big tech companies. And, I'm a pretty good example. I think I've applied now for 250 jobs since last November.
Yeah.
I haven't got a single call. Right? Like you said earlier, maybe we just need to learn something else. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, screw it. I'll just start my own company. Right.
Yeah.
Like if nobody's going to hire me, then, because I don't have that college degree or whatever else they're looking for, I'll just start my own. But I think most humans, if they're normal, right, have like need or urge or something within us that drives us to be better, drives us to make things better for other people. because I think we all do have some kind of empathy within us, right? And we want to see things better for our fellow human beings or just our families, right?
Yeah.
People that we care about. So I think that's a big driver. So I think having some kind of universal basic income to meet the needs for people that are unemployed, and it's almost, I mean, we already have kind of a UBI and unemployment, right?
Yeah.
So, but when that runs out, then now you got to go find a job or figure out something else to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I would argue with a lot of people that we already kind of have a UBI.
Yeah, in a way, I think we
if
do.
you had a job already.
And I do feel like this is the tricky part, is right. Like, who decides how long it should last and who's eligible after a certain amount of time versus who's not.
Right.
I would say,
and how much they get.
How much they get.
Right. Like, because a lot of, proponents of UBI is like, oh, we'll give people $1,000 a month. I'm like, there isn't a person in the United States that can live off that anymore. Yeah. Right. So with the cost of everything going through the roof and, corporate profits being higher now than they've ever been before, but still more and more people can't afford things, like, we're going to have to figure out something soon.
Well, and like,
because you're just going to create a bunch of haves and have-nots, and that'll just make crime go higher.
Well, I think it's even more nefarious than that. Like, who's going to pay for all the people that aren't working? That money has to come from somewhere, right? So you're going to have this class of people.
Right, it's going to have to be corporations. Like, I mean, this is kind of
income inequality is no one's
right about corporate greed.
Like, there's been no effort to combat that.
Recording record profits.
Yeah, and it's ironic.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's crazy.
How about we look at the political aspect of it though? Because if you're, I'm just saying, if you're from the right,
go ahead, Ian.
Right, you're the 1 or 3% or whatever that is now. What is the right hates more than anything the poor person on welfare that doesn't want to get a job, that doesn't want to work, right? They don't like the welfare babies. But now who's creating this new talk of a different economy, a resource-based economy where you sit on your ass because you don't have a job? Who's creating that? It's the people that hate it. It's the dominant, well-off, the wealthy that hate that are creating this new, you can work a job if you want to because, like a hobby. I mean, fuck Elon Musk for saying that,
Well, I mean, maybe it gets back to, remember, I don't even know if they still do this in school, but remember that in school you took like this little test of like who you want to be, right? Or what career you would be good at when you grew up type thing. You guys remember that? In school,
yeah.
I don't know if they do that still. Probably not. But maybe it's time to do that again, right? Especially with the people that are not employed or on welfare.
No, now, Jared, the test is, do you want to be a man or woman when you grow up?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, fuck.
There is that part of it, too.
I was supposed to be a sheriff, by the way. I'm glad that didn't work out.
I think I was supposed to be a firefighter, if I remember right. Yeah, I had a lot of friends that turned out as garbage men. Those are also the guys that really didn't answer the questions very well. So your AI is going to place you in a job.
Yeah,
better fill it out well. All right, so let's talk about like AI regulations and oversight. So, is there much in the way of that now? Do you know?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff, or a big thing that got passed in Europe that's called the EU's Artificial Intelligence Act. And I haven't read the whole thing. I've been learning little bits and pieces about it. But it's like you have obligations around like data training and governance and things like that, record keeping. But where I see the rubber hitting the road right now is that people want traceability, and they want to know that, like, when it gives you an answer, where did it get that answer from? So if you ask ChatGPT, like, what is the difference between a good moral and a bad moral? It's going to give you an answer.
Right.
But what if you want to know where it got the answer so you can go read the article for yourself or read the blog or whatever it is? And this is something that's happening right now because, I think this is fairly natural behavior from all the people that got sued last year that released their AI stuff too early, right? And they ended up in the headlines. I haven't seen as many headlines about AI going bad this year. I don't think it's because everyone magically learned how to do it. I think it's because most people decided not to release them publicly and start internally, which is, exactly what should be happening in my opinion, because you got to test these things internally first.
Right.
But once you release them to the public, when it says something like, hey, this is our refund policy, what I think a lot of people are wanting to do now is give them a link that says, here's the documentation that describes the refund policy. We're just giving you a summary of that policy. So you don't have to go read the document yourself, So I think part of this is like going to dictate what the user experience is like for the next few years, at least, in that it's going to be easier to get the information you want, easier to make sure it's true. Not that everyone's going to click on those links, but it should be easier.
Yeah.
And then, the data that you train on, that's become a big topic, right? Like Reddit, which is a site I use all the time for information because I find it like the most valuable in my experience. They sold to Google, or they sell their information to Google now, so Google can train their models on Reddit. And that means that everybody else isn't supposed to or can't, right? So
Right. Non-competes.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Like, how do you compete with that? Well, you have to go out and potentially buy content from other people, which means you need content creators to go produce how to build a bench with wood, right? Like, chat bot's not going to know how to do that. So someone's got to write the content. It's got to train on that content. It's probably got to see it more than once. So you got to see a bunch of different ones. And I think the incentive structures are changing, right? Like, one of the great things that came out of the last 20 years of internet that we've had is like a lot of the content that we consume is free. And a lot of the people that consume that content get paid in various ways based on the popularity, right? Like YouTube's a great example. People get paid on YouTube for making good content, but there's a lot of scams too, right? Like, you guys may have seen that someone in Spotify created a bunch of AI music and then created a bunch of accounts to listen to that music and pocketed like $10 million.
Saw that.
Yeah.
So talk about the fear, Ian. Like, how are people supposed to get over the fear? Look at how people are misusing AI, quote unquote, misusing it to understand like what's going to happen in the future, or what's happening now, and then like how this could be exacerbated in the future. And this is where I think the regulations will come into play. It's like, okay, something happened that most people agree is a bad thing. You shouldn't be able to do that to Spotify, potentially, right? Like, I don't know if I care where you stand on the issue. I think it's perfectly fine. But it's fraud in the sense that you're creating a fake thing, and then you're creating fake things to go listen to that thing. Because
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So if I was going to write some legislation, I would say you're not allowed to create fake content with AI and then create fake
it's
fake
manipulation.
audience, right? And to go listen to that content so that you get paid.
Right.
I don't know exactly how that regulation would get written, but something clearly should be written about that, right? So we prevent that.
Well, and that's what they'll do with this case, right? Because that's how most laws work. They go cited by case. So since this is the first one, right, that we know of anyway, or the biggest one, like there'll be case law written off of this, and then anybody doing it in the future will be able to cite this case and go, well, based on this case, you can't do that anymore.
Well,
and then it'll be made into a law.
Well, like, I think David Sachs mentioned this on the All In podcast, which I listen to every week. He said that there's a lot of laws already for this stuff, right? You're just using a new tool to perpetrate fraud or perpetrate illegal activity. And there's already laws for all that. So there's already laws for fraud. We don't need, might not need new ones. We need to make better tools to detect it, right? Like the whole thing that happened in, I think it was Asia, where someone created a fake CFO on a Zoom and said, transfer $38 million.
Yep, I saw that.
And they fell for it. Like, that's my believable. Yeah, that's my bigger concern, is like, now all of a sudden we have to create some sort of pause in our mental model of the world where not only is what we see potentially not true, but what we hear is now almost entirely fake, could be entirely fake, right? And as the video models get better, we won't be able to believe our eyes either. So what's going to happen? Like, I could see how the world could tear itself apart with this. I could also see how people start to disengage from technology because becomes too hard. That's where I'm at. Like, I don't want to be on social media. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I haven't for a long time. I resist the urge every time it pops up. It's like that urge to become popular or famous, you know? I think we all have a little bit of that. And whenever I
Mhm.
notice that, I stomp it out. I'm like, I don't want that, despite my brain or whatever saying that I do. So that's going to prevent a lot of things. But then, you know, like Jared, if mom reads something on Facebook or she sees a picture of, there's a picture going around I saw on Reddit on the AI art subreddit where they show this human that's like 9 foot tall and they're surrounded by, you know, regular sized people, but it's
Mhm.
made to look like it's from one of the earliest cameras ever taken.
Right.
And it looks kind of real until you start looking at the little details. But that
Yeah.
shit's getting shared on Facebook as if it's real.
Oh yeah.
And who cares about this tall guy from the 1800s or 1900s? But like when that is, you know, the president in a drugstore robbing the store with a gun on video, that gets freaky, right? Is it real or is it not?
Right.
And when
You
you have
can't
Trump
believe
saying,
anything you see.
yeah, when you have Trump saying like I could shoot
Right.
in the middle of the street and no one would care, if someone pushed a video out that looked real and it was him shooting someone in the middle of the street, what would happen? Like
Right.
I can see both people, both sides of this equation saying it's totally fake, it's bullshit AI, but then people using it as if it's real to try and, you know, run a narrative or pursue their
Well,
agenda.
it's funny you say that because wasn't I just watched something, what was it, 2 weeks ago, where they posted a shot of Biden walking through the White House, like the outside of the White House, and you could clearly tell that it wasn't him walking.
Yeah.
Like just the way he was walking, it was like a 45-year-old walking on the outside, but it had Biden's face on it.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're like, Biden's fine. I'm like, no, he's not. Like every other video I've ever seen of him, he does not walk like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not even close to being him, but it looked like Biden. Like
Yeah.
it's just there was honestly no way to tell if you hadn't watched a lot of video footage of him before, right? And see how he walks and how he carries himself. Most people wouldn't have even noticed.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look at
the
special
day is
effects.
here,
Yeah, like
right?
special effects in movies have been able to do deep fakes for years. They're getting
Oh
more and
yeah.
more convincing. And I don't
Well,
think
and the
people,
problem is real time. Like
yeah,
in the day, Hollywood could do that, but it took them months to do it, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
animators and blah 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 blah. But now there's AI tools out there. It'll map my face right now, and I can be a completely different person
that's right.
and talking real time like I am
Yeah,
now. And if I want, I can click choose different voice, and then I can sound like a woman or I can sound like somebody else.
yeah,
And so you wouldn't even know. So I kind of thought about that as a workaround to getting a job since I'm a middle-aged white guy. Maybe I just need to
yeah,
be somebody else. Right? And
yeah, yeah. See, but
every meeting I join, I'm just a fake person.
but back to like regulations. There's a law against impersonation, right? I know
True.
there's one in Arizona. It's a felony. So again, there's already laws for this.
Yeah.
It's gonna get weird though when you're like, are you impersonating yourself? But now there's 10 of you doing, like, you remember that movie from way back in the day where it was Beetlejuice, what's his name?
Oh yeah, multiplicity.
Yeah, Multiplicity. Like imagine that in the virtual world. You could have 10 of you out doing things like posting on LinkedIn, and you know, you could write a little AI bot that goes out and does research on topics you care about, creates posts, and then just post them, or creates a list of posts that are ready to go, and as soon as you hit approve, it goes and posts them, and it learns how to post them at the right time for the most engagement. Like that's cool because you're doing more, but who's going to consume all this shit? If everyone starts doing that, the information overload gets even worse. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm already like overloaded with information anyways. Like I go through stints where I delete Reddit and YouTube and everything on my phone because I'm just done. Like I can't keep, you know,
Right.
and supplying the algorithm with, you know, with food because I'm its food. And like I just don't know. It's going to be this explosion of content, but now we're going to have so much more to sift through, and it's going to be a lot more shitty stuff, not a lot of good stuff, because it's all
So
derivative of what the other things were trained on, right? These models.
right. So I mean that's a pretty big genuine fear that we've talked through. Like, is there any way to mitigate that?
I don't know what to be afraid of yet. So I don't know how to mitigate things I don't know to be afraid of, right? Like, am I
True.
afraid of it taking my job anytime soon? No. Am I afraid of it taking my daughter's job anytime soon? No, but there's robots that already do robotic lashes. And, that's part of what she does is lashes, eyelashes, for those that don't know. And there's robots now that do this for you. And when I talked to her about it, she was actually excited about it because she could do more lashes in shorter time period with these robots because you still implement your style. To Jared, to your point earlier about like training a machine to have your style.
Mm-hmm.
Those robots are designed as you can, as an artist, you can put in your style and it will do it in your style. But like, how many different styles are there for eyelashes? Come on, there can't be that many.
Right.
But the other thing she said was that she doesn't really like doing lashes because it's an hour and a half over someone's head, and they don't like laying there for that long. For the most complicated jobs, it takes an hour and a half or
So
so.
can AI?
Uh-oh. Did you lock up?
No, I
I
see.
heard can AI. What else
Yeah.
was that?
Oh, can AI do a CEO's job? Can we program an AI CEO?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think you can. I think there was a college that did an experiment that completely created an AI company, right? They created an AI CEO, an AI CFO, a CIO, and then a bunch of developers. And then they gave an objective to the CEO as a company of like, this is what we want you to achieve, right? So the AI bot talked to the CFO and the CIO, conveyed its objective, right, and its vision. The CIO then went and talked to the AI bots that were the developers, and then the developer AI bots developed that application. But as they recorded the conversations between the AIs, like there were conversations going back and forth between all the AIs, like, well, hey, we're going to need more resources to be able to do this. So they went and talked to the CFO, right? So like there's this whole chain of like decision making process that was honestly kind of scary. It's like you just made an instance where humans were not even needed and they did it in record amount of time, like no human
Well, I
could have
like
been
the
able to do
idea.
it.
I like the idea of a company, being able to produce, be ran efficiently, and not have to pay that CEO $18 million a year or whatever bonuses that CEO would normally take, and maybe give that back to the people who are the backbone of the company that actually make that organization what it is. Is that possible through AI?
We have that today. It's called stock and going public as a company, right? Like, so there's a way
Sure.
to do profit sharing today. AI doesn't change any of that. I think there's just
Except for the part where the CEO collects the $18 million every year, though, right?
well,
Or
the
I
CEO
mean,
collects that much money, and I think CEOs are probably paid too much. Like, let's be
Yeah, they're
honest,
paid way too much.
it's
maybe
hard
maybe
to
a tad. I
justify.
mean, 280 times the average American worker
Yeah,
is a little
it's hard
much,
to
isn't it?
justify that. I think
Mm-mm.
some pay to CEOs, like above and beyond the average employee, is totally justified because they take more risk, right? Like if the company's not doing well, sure, there's individuals that are going to get laid off or fired, but ultimately the CEO is the one that their neck is on the line, right? And if someone gets sued, like, or they go and do an earnings call, the CEO does that. Like, if you've ever listened to an earnings call, I don't want to ever do those. Like, I don't ever want to be a public company CEO because
Yeah,
it's
but I mean, you say that, but look at Boeing, like perfect example. That CEO and Boeing's been a shitty company for a long time. And just now, as pressure has been getting bad from the company, they're finally, he's finally owning up to some of that, but it's taken how many years?
well, yeah, and that's kind of one of those things where yeah, I would look more at the culture that was instituted at that company by that CEO because culture is a top-down thing typically, and so he created a culture of fear. And you would have to tell the AI, don't create a culture of fear at this company. But will culture matter in an AI generated in an AI world? Like if you have a bunch of roles that are done by AI, you could argue that culture doesn't matter as much. Maybe it matters even more for the few humans you do have. But now you have to incorporate this thing that is easy, almost too easy to anthropomorphize as another person in your company, right? And you've seen people do this where they start to give the AI human qualities, like they start giving it pronouns like he, she. They start giving it a name, And
Oh boy.
next thing you know, like you guys have probably seen the movie Her or other ones like Ex Machina.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start to anthropomorphize the machine, bad shit happens because all of our great tendencies and great attributes come across, but all of the bad ones do too. Like, are we too trusting? You know, if you're too trusting of a person and now you're trusting this machine to go do something and it was created by someone that has a nefarious intent, then it's going to easily trick you, just like a human can. So
Right.
I think a lot of this fear that we have is partly because we don't know if it's going to take our job. And again, I think the harder your job is, the more domain expertise you need to do that job, I think the less likely it's going to take that job. But I could argue at the same time that programming fits all those categories and it could take that job sooner than we maybe want it to or think. So where was I? Sorry, I just got a text message. The fear is about like a lot of its imagination, right? Is the fear of AI, is it going to manifest into something like we've seen in the movies like Terminator, right?
Right.
I think we have these fears not just because we've seen the movies, but because we know what humans are capable of. And if it's humans creating this technology and it's learning from human communication over years and writings and video and all that stuff, then you have to assume that it's also capable of all that evil shit. And so someone is there basically going through all of the video, all of the text and everything else that it's being trained on and marking things as bad and good. That's where the bias comes from. So with some of these models that were trained by armies of cheap labor, what bias did they put into the machine? I don't know. It's there, right?
And maybe without even realizing it too.
But
right?
definitely without realizing it.
Right.
And then
I
when
don't
you
think, like you said, there's nefarious intent, but
yeah. But if we start seeing legislation like around trying to legislate bias and things like that, run away, because that's kind of what's happening right now, right? Like in the UK, look at what's happening in the UK. They're trying to stamp out free speech. Like it's fucking disgusting. And they're trying to they put people in jail for tweets they made where they just tweeted an opinion. And according to what I've read on not just mainstream media, but on Reddit and places like that, like there's people getting put in jail for things that they tweet out. Now, that doesn't feel right to me. And
it's not.
Context matters. Context does matter.
Yeah, that's completely wrong.
That seems so fucking weird. So who's the person that's now going to decide that bias is the wrong bias? Like this is, I think, regulation and stuff starts to get really wonky. It's like we have to be careful that we're not legislating human judgment too much. Because we agree as a society, we have legislated some human judgment. You shouldn't be able to walk up to someone and shoot them. Legislate it, right? You can't murder people, you go to jail. That stuff is already legislated. But like all this other stuff that may or may not happen with AI, I just don't know. But if we start seeing to where it starts to become a suppression thing, and it's starting to suppress more than just we all agree is like evil and bad, then that's kind of what's happening in the UK and in this country to a certain extent. So I don't love the idea of free speech being destroyed by a machine because it understands speech and now you can use it to basically as a giant ban hammer for your platform. You know?
Right. Now imagine being pulled over by an AI cop.
Yeah. That would be fun.
I mean, fuck.
Yeah. Well,
So
we already do get pulled over by AI cops. We have those speed cameras. We've had those for a long time.
Yeah. They just mail you a ticket.
Yeah, they mail a ticket. It's very unemotional.
Yeah.
They don't care about you. They just want your
Well,
money.
I'm scared shitless of RoboCop pulling me over, man. Because I mean, I don't know how that guy's fucking wired or on that particular day, you know.
I do, dead or alive.
Scenario.
You're coming with me, punk.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
You know, it's funny. I was talking to a friend at work about what's that receiver? Is it Tyreek Hill? One of the receivers, NFL receivers, just got pulled over.
Yeah, one just went through that, right?
Yeah. And I watched the very beginning of the recording, and that's all I needed to see to understand what happened. Because in the very beginning, the driver has attitude. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, this is escalating because you can't meet that with anything other than like your own resistance to that. And so the cop gets amped up and the person gets amped up and it just keeps amping each other up and no one diffuses it because it takes way too much sacrifice and like recognition of your ego to like diffuse that situation or not even start it to begin with. And
But
so
wasn't it like a week before that, though, a 49ers player rolled down his window and he was shot while the guy tried to take his Rolex?
I don't know. I don't know. So again, like
Right.
that matters for sure, but like it's an easy principle to see play out. It's like resistance meets resistance, and it just begets more
Right.
resistance. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. Now, I'm not
Well,
saying
law
the cop was
enforcement
in the
has
right.
to keep the upper hand
Yeah,
for sure.
law
Yeah.
enforcement should be the one taking the high road. That's
Yeah, they should.
absolutely. I agree.
They should be the ones diffusing the situation.
Yes.
Yeah,
They should also
be
just
peace
be in complete
officers.
control. Right. Yeah.
Right. I think we should rename them from police officers to peace officers because that would better describe what they're there to do. Right. Like, again, you roll up on a crime and there's shooting. That's a totally different scenario. But traffic stop, like, all right, dude, you were running a red light, like,
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. Right. If he's going to have attitude, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like, you're going to get a ticket.
Yeah.
And I think that
you can be
player a
pissed
couple
off all
days
you
later
want.
had some regret. Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
had some regret and was like, "Hey, I shouldn't, I shouldn't have acted that way."
But again, like Steve was pointing out, it takes two, right? Like
right,
you're going to escalate based on how that person reacts, and then you're going to react to that, and then you're going to react, and if you just stand back and be that neutral person, right, and just go, all right, you were in the wrong, you're going to get a ticket, have a nice day, right? Like, here's your ticket, bye, and then it didn't have to be anything else, but yeah.
Well, and it should be understood that nobody is above the law either, right?
Right.
I mean, nobody's
except Elon Musk, but yeah.
Jared, fuck that guy.
You guys
fucking hate him.
Why do people hate Elon? Like,
I just fucking hate him, dude, because I think he's so fake. I think he's so pompous. I think that he believes that he's smarter than everybody. I mean, like, who the hell am I, right?
Yeah, I think he has a giant ego.
But
yeah,
he has a giant ego, and I think that his fortune, and his prestige and his celebrity allows him to make statements about things that are just, I mean, he's talking out of his fucking ass. This guy does not know all of that. I mean, he just does not. And the things that he does support, I don't want to go out and merge into traffic with 100 self-driving vehicles, dude. I don't think that that's safe. Fuck his rockets. Fuck. I mean, he's the damn machine to me, and I'm Gen X, and I say fuck the machine. I don't think he completely has everything. I mean, you made the statement too earlier, Steve, that like he thinks that he can get things done way faster than he can. I think he lives in a dream world. And I know that he's kind of at the forefront of AI. He is to some extent an autistic genius or something. Maybe he's Rain Man or can really count toothpicks as they fall on the floor in a cafe. I don't fucking know. He definitely has his skills. He's a charismatic leader for sure. He has the attention of the public, but I don't think that he is as smart as he claims to be. I don't think he is as innovative as he is.
Why does he have the attention of the public? And I think it's because society values money now more than anything else. And as the richest man in the world, people are going to listen to him.
Right. But that doesn't mean that he, his word is gospel and that he knows everything. I mean, I don't know anything. I just don't know anything. I'm just some guy that lives on his property trying to run a podcast out of his shop. But like some of the things that he says to me just are unrealistic.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's dating himself. I mean, this whole shit, you talk about free speech, you talk about all these things, and you look what he did with Twitter, right? And then he goes and he takes this interview with Donald Trump, which I'm not bagging the guy. I mean, but these two idiots, proceed to give an interview or whatever, and it's all just egotistical bullshit.
Yeah.
You're watching us because of who we are and the prestige that we have.
Yeah.
And they're both fucking idiots.
Well, and I think they need to be held to a higher standard, right? Like when you have that much influence, Elon's Musk that he posted about Kamala and her VP is like, he posted something about how come nobody's done assassination attempts on those two, right? And then he had to eventually take the post down, but the damage was done and it was out there.
Yeah, it's hate speech. It's hate speech. It's like, hey, why,
I mean,
let's make this
one,
fair.
you can voice your opinion, right? I guess, but like, there's got to be a line, right?
Right.
Especially
And don't
where you
encourage
are
hate
as
and
a
violence on
person.
somebody else. Right. Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts, Steve? You're pretty quiet.
I mean, look, I don't think you should get all of your information from one person. Like, so
No,
Elon's just one guy, and like
but
I
he's a
don't know.
very influential guy.
Yeah, yeah. I don't own a Tesla. Like I've never flown on a SpaceX rocket, and I don't use Twitter, so I don't really use his products. You guys are on Starlink, so you're benefiting from some of his moonshots, so to speak. But I think he's got some good ideas and other bad ones. Like I'm trying not to give too many people too much power in my life over like how I think and act and behave. So I kind of see him as just yet another person that's doing stuff that some of it's probably good and I might take ideas from, and other stuff it's like clearly not my style. Right? Like
Yeah,
the fact that he named his kid X. It's like
right. I
dumb
mean,
to
come
me.
on, man.
It's so dumb to me.
Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I do think Teslas are pretty cool for what they are. And I I do see what I think is like people treating him unfairly in the political world because he owns Twitter. Like if he didn't own Twitter, I don't know that he would be as such a political figure right now or so polarizing.
Yeah, I would agree, actually,
But
because he owns a freedom of speech platform, right?
that's what that's so self-titled, right? He calls it a freedom of speech platform,
Right.
but he has been boosting his own shit, and
Hmm.
that's fine. He owns the platform, but you like, can you call it a freedom of speech platform without the algorithms being publicly known and how everything works, how shit gets boosted? Um, and
Right.
then
Be transparent.
yeah, be absolutely transparent. If you have nothing to hide, be absolutely transparent. I know transparency is not always good, but in this case, I believe that it's good, and you should be as transparent as possible. So if you
Well, and
make decisions about, you know, people getting banned or deplatformed or whatever, it should be absolutely transparent as to what happened and how the decision was made in the public eye.
yeah, and
Why
I think
not?
that's what's going to help us with AI systems too. Like all these companies developing it need to be transparent, to a point, not to that they need to show their IP, right? Their intellectual property that they're developing in that AI system, but they need to be either going before regulations committees saying, hey, this is what we're working on, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like weapon systems. There's a lot of companies developing AI weapon systems right now, and I've seen some pretty scary interviews with guys that are working on those. I'm just like, really? That's the attitude you want to take? Like, one example was a guy, he came back from, I think it was Afghanistan, where he saw lots of his fellow soldiers die. And one of them was from a bomb that was strapped to a kid. Right. And so he's like, as human beings, we're all like, oh, it's a little kid. That's not a threat. Right. But he's like, an AI system would have noticed, the kid was walking funny or his characteristics were
Yeah.
different, or, he was wider around the chest than he should have been, right? Like he's wearing a bomb jacket, and the AI would have acted, right, and just killed the kid. Whereas the rest of us are like, oh, he's just a kid coming in, and he killed 5, 6 soldiers. So he's
I
like,
think
we want to develop that humanity
AI
out
would
of AI
probably
systems.
AI would probably go find a dog, strap a bomb to a dog, and send it in to kill the kid because it would find the least noticeable thing, right? Like that shit is like freaks me out for sure.
Yeah. So and we can talk about regulations and government oversights and everything like that, but like when you're talking about weapon systems and then like national security, like who's to say China's not developing something that nobody else knows about that's going to do
Yeah.
something, or even us, right? Even America, like we got to be number one in everything, right? So how do we know that somebody's not out there developing Terminators?
Well,
Right?
this is the problem, right? This
Right?
is like the escalation
It's
thing. So
conjecture, but
we don't know they're not, so we have to assume that they are, and so we're going to
right.
go produce our own, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is where transparency can be bad, because if we tell too much about what we're working on, then our competition will, like our national competition, will take those ideas and beat us to market potentially, or come out close to the same time. And we need a head start on some of this stuff if we want to maintain our national competitive advantage with all these other countries and like basically compete for GDP, right? That's what we're doing. So yeah, I think we should talk about what we're doing, but at some point, I'm not sure it's all good. The transparency is all good, but when it comes to decision making after the fact, absolute transparency. And then when it comes to like where we're getting the content to train these things on, this has been something I've been conflicted about since it first started. It's like, they're taking images off of like Getty Images, like those are all licensed. The artists were paid for to go take those photos, and then they're training them on, or they're using them to train their machines. They're not paying Getty a dime. Is that fair to Getty? Is it fair to the artists, right? And don't just think about the CEO at Getty, but think about all the employees that work their butts off at Getty Images to produce these websites and get these images out there, deliver them to their customer. And now you can just go create one whenever you want. And it was enabled in part by the software that you would put out there, having no idea that this was happening behind the scenes. And if you did know, maybe you did something, like you turned your APIs off or something, but for the most part you didn't know. And now there doesn't seem to be any consequences. So putting that aside, we don't know if there will be consequences or not. Like, the damage is done. This is typically how Silicon Valley operates, right? Is like fuck around and find out type of mentality. Well, now we're finding out a little bit. This is why the Reddit deal happened with Google. And I expect it won't be the last. So
Yeah.
We'll see. And I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just that there's a lot of stuff that has to be figured out still. It's like, where are we going to get all the new content to train these machines?
Yeah, I'm going to show you something real quick. So I was working on a project and I wanted a kid, right, in a war zone holding a teddy bear. I
Okay.
described it a little further than that, right, into Mid-Journey, right? But this is what it came up with. Can you guys see that? Oh, wait, I have to hit share.
Oh,
There you go.
Sure.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it looks real. Look at the fingers. Let's look at the fingers. Enhance.
Yeah, the fingers are real. I looked because that was a big problem with Mid-Journey.
Thumbs weird.
A little bit.
A little bit, but not noticeable unless you
No.
pick.
But I mean, that's insane. But like to your set, like you said, how did it train all the based on all your Getty images, like war photography and photographs? Like, I don't even know if this is a real kid that it stole an image from, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, and images can be very polarizing, right? Like
Right.
the Trump picture of him surviving that first assassination attempt.
But I mean, as I zoom in, like the detail on the teddy bear is just, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy good.
And that's what AI can do.
Yeah.
It's cool because I don't have to create that picture myself. But
well, that's the thing. You can't create that picture, right? You have to be in the right place at the time.
Right.
So, it's fascinating. What do you guys think about AI music? Have you actually listened to it?
Yeah, I've listened to some. It's pretty decent. But I mean, that
work. So does it just?
Ian, you got wonky again.
Yeah. How does it work?
Ian, I don't think you're coming through the right mic.
I'm wonky. Is it
Yeah.
the video?
Well, yeah, you're frozen, but your audio sounds really far away.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Oh, it switched mics on me there.
Oh, okay.
I'll blame it on the AI.
There you
go. What are your thoughts?
But man, it was so interesting looking at the regulation piece, and I kept thinking about the advancements in medicine. So you look at AI and what it can do, and then you think about all the people that are hurting. I mean, as far as medicine, how can AI advance medicine?
Well, I think it can advance it very far. The problem is the companies that own it, are they going to release it?
Right. And then here comes that regulation again, right? And then there's companies that are profiteering off certain products or whatever that can be said to maybe not want to make someone better because they make more some of that GDP we were talking about on
Well, again, I'd say,
not on someone not getting better, right?
right. Let's use an example. Say AI cured cancer yesterday, right?
Mhm.
And it was who's a big company that makes lots of money
Pfizer,
on
Moderna.
Yeah,
say
Pfizer,
it was
Moderna,
Pfizer,
all of them.
right? Like how much money do they make off of all the other drugs they sell for cancer patients and all the other equipment they sell for cancer patients and all the other treatments they get sell for cancer patients
Yeah.
that now goes away because they have a cure for cancer.
Yeah, treat the symptom, not the cause.
Right. So
Or
again, it goes to transparency, but if the company doesn't want you to know about it, they're not going to tell you. But I think that's why some of that whistleblower, protection helps, right? So like if you work at a company and you found out that they
Right.
made a cure for cancer and just are burying it because they don't want to mess with their profits, you should come forward and say something.
Jared, if that happened, would you actually win in court? Because that's not against the law to not release a product, right? Like,
Right.
I'm sure it happens all the time where
In the
people,
court of law, no, probably not. In the court of opinion, you'd
yeah,
lose.
yeah, they would lose. But like, who cares?
True.
You know what I mean? Who cares if they would lose? Like something that big, who knows what would happen? I would imagine people would like rebel somehow, but like, what does that look like? A bunch of people can say a bunch of shit online like they don't agree with it, but what actual action is going to happen after a court case like that?
Right.
I
It
don't.
comes into accountability, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, you solved it. Cool. Everybody's been wanting that for forever. But, depending on who you believe and what you believe, we've had cures for cancer for a while. So I don't know.
But like, how come none of them have been mass produced? Like, this is the thing. If it existed, why has it not been mass produced or more commonly available? Like, I don't understand that. This is where I think open source comes into play. Is like, I think open source should be adopted in every industry
Everything. Yep.
possible. Like, find ways to monetize it, yes, but like, why can't we do this research out in the open? I don't know. I'm not a research scientist, so I don't know how that all works. But like, I do hear about the fraud in scientific papers going up over time, not down.
Yep.
And peer reviewed is still the best way to do it because like someone actually has to go and do it themselves. I don't know if I'm getting the words right here, but
Yeah, it is. But if your peers are paid by or, sponsored by these corporations, then
yeah.
they're going to say no as well.
But there is something new that I thought AI had done in the medical world, and I thought that was really cool. What was it? AI medical breakthrough. Let's see if I can pull up anything on the web. Let's see, 9 revolutionary ways that AI is advancing healthcare. Medical imaging. Oh yeah, spotting stuff on like X-rays and stuff.
Right. That humans missed.
That humans miss. I think that's a good one. Surgery. That one's interesting. Like how, imagine a surgeon having more arms than they can control with their arms to do things. That might be kind of cool. Medical research, I think that's a big one. Drug development, I don't know how the algorithms work for that, but I would imagine like the more knowledge you bring in from different domains that aren't typically studied to do, medicine generation or medicine development, you'd probably find some interesting things there, right? Like the more we understand about the physical world, the better we'll likely be able to build new medicines.
Yeah.
So I think
And,
this needs to continue.
right. And you can do like predictive analytics, like, you can feed all your symptoms into a machine or an AI algorithm, right? And it could probably better predict what you have or what's going to be your future better than a lot of humans could because it has that huge database to pull from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's companies that are doing that right now. Like you can do complete genome testing. You send in all your DNA and everything else, and they do all these tests and say, well, you probably shouldn't eat wheat because your body's not,
Yeah.
digesting it properly, or you should stay away from this, or it can tell like ibuprofen doesn't work for you, right? Like, and this is why, based on your gene sequencings. But there are some companies that are doing that. It's expensive. I thought about doing it, but it's like almost $1,000 for the test. But at the end of the day, is $1,000 and knowing that, something else that's affecting you could make you live better. It's probably worth it.
You know what's funny, dude, is I'm trying to do this research right now on Google. This is part of the problem with the internet now. Is like everywhere I go, I click on these articles and it wants money in order to read the article.
Yep.
I'm not paying all of them. Like I just don't have that kind of time, desire, or money to pay every single one of these guys. So this is going to lead me more and more to ChatGPT, right? And they're trying to prevent, like they're trying to make money. And what they're doing is they're robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit. And it could be the demise of their platform. So like the New York Times, try to click on this article. It's like, hey, you need to sign in. It's a free account.
So Forbes does the same thing. All of them are starting to do that.
That's like the Arizona news site that I go to. They give me 3 free articles a month, and then they want me to pay. And I'm like, I'm not paying for this. It's the news story is not worth it to me. Right. And I think in 2 cases I've been like, God, I want to read this article. I should probably pay. But it was about something about politics in Arizona and like possible corruption. So, but again, what am I going to do other than just read it and be more informed? I'm not going to go on some anti-corruption podcast or, protests or podcast.
Or run for governor.
Yeah, but again,
or public office, like Ian wants to do.
Right, but it costs $1,700, dude, to run for Congress. Like, what the fuck? I just want to run for Congress. Like, what's
qualification
so wrong with
you
that?
need, right?
Right, just my $1,700.
Yeah.
It's garbage.
Anyway,
that's your barrier to entry for government. $1,700.
Right. I think the system kind of works though, if you think about it though, because if $1,700 is what hangs up a guy like me from becoming a congressman, then I guess they've won, right?
Right.
Because they're fucked at the day that I come up with $1,700.
Right.
I mean, they are.
Yeah. That, and I think what you need like 10,000 signatures or something, or
oh, I know.
5,000,
dude. That's probably not even that's not even the start to the restrictions.
Right. There's lots of hoops you have to go through.
Yeah.
Right. And by the time I get through them all, I'll be the congressman they want me to be because I'll have to have towed the line to get there, I'm sure.
Right.
You need a scandal too, Ian. Don't forget.
Right. Oh, I have plenty.
Lots of corporate
Just come over for a couple of beers. Oh, yeah. It's perfect politician right here. Plenty of scandal.
What do you guys think about changing the political system where it's more like jury duty, where you get called to serve?
Like you have to be.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
And then you're not paid worth a fuck either. So you're like, oh,
no,
God,
you'd still get paid because it'd be a full-time job.
Yeah, I think it.
Right, but like you don't get paid shit to do jury duty. So, I mean.
Well, but I think in this case, like this is probably never going to happen. So we can talk about it all day.
Right.
It'd be kind of cool if like they replace your salary, whatever you're making. So basically no raise for 2 years, but you don't lose your job. That's against the law. And you basically go into this 2-year commitment of service in something that you're good at. So they like have domain experts. So if you're going to go work for the FDA, you have to have experience there. Or if you're going to work for the tech department in the FDA, you get called up if you have technical skills. And you just kind of go around this and do the math. It's like, okay, maybe if you called people to serve and they're limited, you'd have to have a way to judge their performance to create an incentive to where they want to do the best job they can while they're in, and not do it themselves, right? Not make it less ego driven, less about the individual and more about the help that they gave. You could almost make it anonymous or something.
Yeah, I mean, the only downside I'd see to it is, especially if you're representing corporations, right, and work, like depending on where you work, right? So, like, say you worked for Intel or somebody like that, and you became that politician, right? Intel could say, like, well, you're going to be a politician for 2 years. We're required to keep your job. And if you want it, like, I don't know, $100,000 more when you got back, maybe pass this law for us.
Oh, but legislate that. That's against the law, right? It's like,
Well, it's supposedly, well, that should be against the law now. But I
Well, but
don't
those
think
are
it is.
lobbyists, right? Like Amazon
Right.
has, I think, in
Yeah,
the top
really.
10 lobbyists in the world, so or in the U.S. So maybe you make lobbyists illegal. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
lobbyists
would.
are all bad. I think lobbyists can raise awareness about issues, but lobbyists have become more like a phase gate, or not a phase gate. What's the right word? Like they have too much power, in my opinion,
Yes.
because they're
Well, a
backed
good
by Amazon.
example. Yeah, a
But if
good
they had to
example.
go, I think a that's a good thought. That's an interesting thought. What if they had to? They were limited to the grassroots movement that they believe in, and they had to participate accordingly.
Who the
Yeah, I
lobbyists?
think, or the Congress people.
Yeah, if the lobbyists had to become kind of a, you flip the script, right?
Oh,
So instead of a powerful super PAC, they were limited to, grassroots. They had to march the streets. They had to actually get the public to. They had to
well,
sway public opinion
if
through
you
normal
do it,
means.
I think if you do it like that too, though, you remove the financial incentives, right? Like
That's right. They actually
if
have
you're
to.
called that way to do it, there's no more paying these senators to represent companies. So
Yeah, and
maybe
I think that's
lobbyists
the
would just
problem
go
with
away
lobbyists. Yeah, they
altogether.
have their foot in the door already. They have their invitation, their invite, their foot in the door. They have dinner at the White House right off the bat, right? Because they have enough money to lay on the table to play the game. They have enough money to play the game. So if you took that away, could you do that through legislation? Could you make them have to, pursue the avenues of grassroots lobbyism, I guess, so to speak,
Yeah,
and pursue their agenda that way? It's an interesting thought. And what Steve said kind of brought that to my attention. What if the script was flipped and they had to use the same avenues that political action communities for unions or whatever have to, they're $7 a month or whatever, to just even try to get a voice out there, to even try to attempt to get a foot in the door? What if they just didn't have their invitation to the dinner table? What if money wasn't a factor? What if you were just you, no matter whether or not you are Pfizer, Moderna, or say you are Monsanto? You have that wristband where you have to walk in with everybody else, with the little people, and make your political play and advertise your agenda the same way as everybody else. Is that possible? And
yeah. I
man,
don't know. Or maybe you get a lobbyist assigned to you from one of your competitors.
there you go. I think it's a start.
Then the collusion would happen, right? Like price fixing.
Right.
So that would be.
Right.
And if you look at the lobbyists that like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce spent the most on lobbying. I don't know what the date on this is. This is on opensecrets.org. Oh yeah, it's 2024. Let me go to last year. Biggest spenders in lobbying last year: U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Association of Realtors, American
Of
Hospital
course.
Association, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Pharma, American Medical Association, Amazon.com, business rent. Amazon spent $19.8 million last year on lobbyists. Meta spent 19.3 million. So where is that money
Wow.
going and what are they doing?
Right. What are they paying for?
They're buying their invitation. I think
To
they're buying their
what?
Tory
invitation. They're
capture.
buying their
That's
place
their
in
term.
line.
Yeah.
They're buying their place in line, their access to Trump or to Harris or to Biden or to whoever's running the country. And I think that that's wrong.
So do you ever
Yeah. What
see
if you could flip that?
a world where AI is in partnership and leading people and humanity?
No, because humans are still involved.
Fuck.
Do you think AI could manage humans better?
No, because it's created by humans. Like, I think the worst thing that could happen with AI is we think it's going to be better than us in any way, morally, ethically, emotionally, all the things that like matter that are the human experience. Outside of getting a task done and doing it extremely well, like if we think AI is going to be better than us, I think that is the seed of our destruction, in my opinion, to be like Terminator-esque, because we have a tendency towards violence. War seems to be never ending. Like violence is all around us. I mean, people do bad shit all the time. And it's these same people, this same mentality, this collective earth mentality that creates these things. And this is why when the first AI started coming out, they went instantly racist, right? Like they did one on Twitter and it turned racist in less than 24 hours. Why is that? It's because there's a lot of racist back and forth bullshit on Twitter.
Right.
It's like not hard to understand why. So I think we need to treat it like a tool like anything else. And if we start giving it too much of its own
Yeah, and if Jeffrey
like
Dahmer writes the
governing,
code.
if Jeffrey Dahmer writes the code, it's going to go eat the other LLM. So,
Right.
but if we treat it like a tool, then I think we'll be okay. But as soon as we start treating it like another human being, or we anthropomorphize it as something more than just a machine that does our bidding when we want it to and not when we don't, I kind of think that's how we get fucked. But that's just like, I've had a few days off, so I've been in my head a lot. But like,
I've been thinking the same thing, like leading up to this episode, right? Like we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, Ian and I, right, and you, and I've just been thinking in my head: is there any situation where AI is a better alternative than the way humans currently manage themselves? In a utopian glass half full, maybe, but that's
but
just because I want to see the good in things, but
I
It
think
honestly seems neck and neck.
Humans have this weird thing where we think we know better. It's like we always think we know better. I do the same thing. It's like I'm right, you're wrong. I know how to do this better than you do. And that mentality happens on an individual level and at a collective level. And so, like, I just
how
don't
do
know.
we train that out of humanity?
You can't. I don't think you
don't
can.
think so? You don't think you can educate and raise children a different way?
I mean, yeah, but like it's a bunch of trade-offs. It's trade-offs. Name the best generation. Like how can you
Gen
possibly
X.
answer
No.
to that? Well, I know. That's why I said it on this podcast.
Right.
Like we're biased because we're Gen X.
Right.
Millennials probably think they're the
I
best.
don't know. I think the boomers kind of had it right.
So who knows? Like, but I think it's very dangerous to believe that you know better, like we were talking about with Elon, and then worse, have the power and the capability
I
to
agree.
you know better into some power that has or something,
Dictatorship, right?
some force over other people, right?
Right.
But then the challenge is like we all have to agree on
Yeah.
laws. How do we get our laws? It's because we eventually all agreed that murder's bad and it
Right.
should be against the law. And there should be a punishment for it. So this is where it becomes like this. To me, it's like this snake eating its tail. I don't know what the answer is here. These things are just interesting to think about. But I can say, with some certainty to end this episode potentially is like AI is not nearly as advanced as people think it is. But and I'm trying to be a skeptic because I'm kind of like the show me person. That's how I got good at programming, is like there's no magic here. I need to learn how it works at the very lowest level. Like what happens to a piece of electricity when it goes through a chip, that level. And I still don't fully understand.
Right.
That's okay. But like with AI, I want to understand it. And this is the first technology I've ever encountered where I still don't understand it. I've been working in this industry for a while. I don't understand exactly how it's making the decisions it's making. I know all the techniques it's using, or not all of them, but like it's using weights and it's going through this, trying to predict things. But like even the creators of this stuff can't explain it exactly. And that's the scariest part to me.
Right.
It also drives me to want to understand. And that's why I'm glad I'm in the industry. But we're not doing super advanced things just yet, but every once in a while I get this, like I read something or I see something where I'm like, holy shit, how is that possible? And it just does something that it's like, wow, this is opening up a whole nother set of possibilities in my mind of what might be possible for these things. And that same part of me that gets excited is also the same part of me that's like, holy shit, if it can do this, what else can it do? So it even scares me in that way, right? It's like, God, this thing is powerful.
Right.
And I don't want to think that it's going to destroy us. I don't think it will. But sometimes you see stuff, you're just like, damn.
Right. How'd you get to that conclusion? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
all right, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. We've been
Sure.
chatting for a while.
Well, thanks for joining us here on Common X with Jared and Ian and our special guest, Steve Mayzak. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your insight, sir. Lots of food for thought here, considering AI technology and how we move forward here in the world. I know it's scary, but I think Steve did a good job of explaining to us how it works. As long as there are humans, there will always be error. And apparently we are seeing that in AI. And for God's sakes, don't let Jeffrey Dahmer write the fucking script. This is Common X with Jared and Ian. Thank you. We love you. And goodbye.
Thanks, you guys. See you
later.
Thanks, Steve.
Common X with Jared and Ian. I mean, there's got to be a common sense approach to this. I mean, right?
Generation X has been quiet way too 15 seconds, velocity 2,700 feet per second, altitude 9. New as we know.
Common X.